On this episode, our special guest is Mackeda Bramwell of Keda Law. You're not going to want to miss this. So, with us today, we have Mackeda Bramwell of Keda Law. Thank you for joining us today. Mackeda, if you can just give us a little brief introduction of who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Thanks so much, Charlene, for inviting me.
You're welcome.
So, my name is Mackeda Bramwell. I am a lawyer here in Toronto. I am also called to the bar in Australia and Jamaica. I currently practice both in Jamaica and in Toronto. I practice primarily in real estate law, family law, immigration, and corporate law. And I also do wills and estate planning. And so I am the founder of Keda Law PC, and Keda Law PC is based here in Toronto. And we service not just our community, but also the diaspora. So I'm also an advocate. I'm very involved in the community. I'm a community person. I believe in community building. And I believe in sharing and giving back to a community that has given so much to us.
Mhm.
And so as we rise, we're trying to do what we can to help the community lift itself. And so that is one of the reasons why I participate in segments like these.
Perfect.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Mackeda. You and I have met briefly. I think it was back in November, and I was very, very impressed by you and your work. And I see you all over social media doing a lot of meetups and networking and that sort of stuff. So I, for one, am highly impressed by you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Charlene. It's a pleasure.
So I just want to jump off, Makeda, and just maybe ask a couple of quick questions if we could to get things going.
Yeah.
As a lawyer that focuses on giving back and serving the community, what are some of the fundamental problems or pitfalls that you see people facing within the community at large?
The community, oh wow, we talked about the community. One, we talk about the Black community in a whole, and then we talk about just the wider community and some of the things that is, I would say, an epidemic in our community versus other community.
Hmm.
Let's focus on our community a little bit more. Our community have an issue with building generational wealth. Our community have an issue with putting plans in place early on so that those plans will prevent, further or mitigate certain circumstances that could be proved challenging later on. A simple thing like having a will, for example.
Hmm.
If you do a canvas in our community, a lot of people do not have a will.
Hmm.
They do not have a power of attorney.
Hmm.
And so what I see a lot happen is when someone is in the hospital and they're incapacitated, that's usually the time that they're reaching out to me to say, my dad or my mom or my sister or brother is in the hospital. Can you come to the hospital and do a power of attorney? Because now it's required.
Hmm.
And I get to the hospital and that person can't speak to me. They can't give me instruction. And in most cases, I am saying, unfortunately, I can't assist you." And then the next question is, but we were told to come to a lawyer. What else can we do? And at that stage, my advice is we have to go to court. We have to get a guardianship. We have to now go through this very lengthy court process for you to be able to make decision for a loved one, whether it's their healthcare reasons or their financial reasons, right?
Hmm.
And so in most cases, if our community was thinking, thinking proactively,
Right.
we wouldn't have to spend thousands of dollars going to court to get a guardianship or to, get court ordered process. right? When it can be a very simple process, getting a power of attorney that costs maybe a few $100s. Right. In some cases, there are people, my office, for example, charge a very minimal fee for a power of attorney. Right. And then again, a lot of time when people are grieving, and that's when they come to try to say, what can I do? And at this stage, they're in conflict. It is an epidemic in our community, and partly because a lot of people, if you talk to, they might have some trauma, or they may feel like, oh, you're trying to kill me. That's why you want to have a will, right? And they
Yeah.
don't understand the significance of these types of planning, right? It's not just about your money. For example, if you have a child, you want to have a will that speaks to the guardianship of your child should something happen to you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right? So a lot of time people say, I don't even have any property. Everybody have property. Your clothes is your property, right? Your headset, the high glasses that you have on is your property. And if you have children, if you have bank accounts, every single thing is a property. You can make decisions early on for those. I see that as an epidemic in our community where it's not helping us to put proper financial planning or proper estate planning in place. And I wish we would do that. The second thing is a lot of persons, if they are fortunate enough to purchase a home, oftentimes they're not guided properly. And so, you find that I've had clients who lost their home because they took out second and third mortgages to go on vacations. Okay. And nobody, and these mortgages, second and third, would normally be with a private lender,
Mhm.
somebody who's potentially one of those loan sharks, right? And they don't care. They don't have any heart when it comes to foreclosing, or issuing a notice of sale on your property. They don't care that you own that property for 20 years, right? They want their money, and they're going to now send you a long payout statement that have ridiculous interest rates and tagged with a whole lot of charges. And oftentimes I've seen it where people just cannot close because of these extra charges that is on the second and third mortgages that they've taken out to go and splurge, right? And they're not thinking about the long-term consequences of those things. And I would love for our community to be properly educated, right? We talk about financial literacy, but there's also something called finance literacy. And it is so completely different that you understand how to invest and spend your finances and when to take these seconds and how to leverage them. So
Mhm.
those are some of the things that I see happen often in my practice or in my community, right? That we can do much better with, and we can really help people that way.
Mhm.
Wow, I'm going to make a note of that. Finance literacy. Greg is laughing because I make notes on all of these terms that I'm hearing and I go and research them. So it helps me, talk to my clients, for
Yes,
example. So, wow,
absolutely.
that is very, very true what you just said. Not to mention the fact that it's not something that we were ever taught. We weren't taught that in school. I went to school here in Canada. I know that we don't have a finance course in high school. Having said all of that, I feel like things are changing. Things
Mhm.
are definitely getting better. They
Mhm.
are trying to teach it in
Mhm.
school. That is an absolute good thing.
Mhm.
Um, can we catch up to our generation and the generation before us? Probably not, but I feel going forward, it's going to have an impact.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when we talk about the sandwich generation, we're talking about people like myself in our 40s and 50s, right? So it
Yes.
was a generation before, and then there was a generation. So we're right in the middle.
Yeah.
We're going through a tough time, economically, right? It's a tough time for everyone in the world, but
Mm.
it doesn't mean that we can't catch up. It means that we need to be taught proper financial planning and certain things that can help us get there.
Right. Right.
Oftentimes in our community, we are concerned with how we look, how we present, right? We will invest in driving a Mercedes Benz that costs $2,000 a month, but we will not put away that $2,000 a month for 2 years to invest in a property that could potentially give us equity long term.
Right.
Now, because we're so caught up and concerned about the image that we portray. And I think that's one of the other epidemic that we need to start telling people.
Mm-hmm.
You need to stop focus on the Chanel bags that you'll pay $6,000 for. I've never seen so many broke people look so rich.
I'm glad you said it.
I am a lawyer that drove the same car for 10 years because
Yeah.
I refused to take out a car loan that
Yeah.
did not benefit me. I look at it and I said, that could be another mortgage.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I did the same thing. I drove the same car for almost 10 years. I
Yeah,
refused to have a car payment because that car was paid off,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
That to me
And
was
so that's how we need to be
yeah.
teaching people how to think.
Mm-hmm.
I've met a lot of millionaires in my life, and half of those millionaires, if you see them, you would never tell that they're millionaires. They
Mm-hmm.
are so simple. They dress simple. They live simple lives, but they
Yeah.
have a lot of money. And everything that they do, they collect a receipt. They need to have it written off. And
Yeah.
so we need to start teaching people the ways of the rich. How
Yes.
are these people remaining rich? Well, part of it is they're not buying Chanel.
Yes. And the thing is too, I saw something on social media the other day. You guys are gonna laugh at this. There was a guy doing a video, a rapper doing a video, and because he had red bottom shoes on, he just kept lifting his foot up, and they thought it was hilarious. All of the comments were like, what is wrong with this guy? He's got to show off his red bottom shoes. In
Yeah.
any case, I totally hear what you're saying. I, you know, it's something that I've been saying for quite some time. Instead
Yeah.
of spending $150 for bottle service at the club, save your $150, right?
Yeah.
When we were growing up, it was $20 to get into a club. And I was like, no, I don't really want to spend that money. Not because I'm cheap, but because I could have spent it somewhere else,
Yeah.
right?
And it's somewhere else that makes sense. And I'm
Yes.
always, I have children as well. And I've always taught my boys that, listen, you need to be the leader in your group. You don't need to follow everybody else, right? And so it's okay if you're unique. It's okay if you stand out. If it's okay if you are the odd one, in the entire group. And have a mind for your own and think, everything that you do, if you're going to do this, think about the consequences later on. I
Mhm.
always taught them since they were young, think about the consequences. Every choice, there's a consequence to that.
Yes, absolutely.
Consequence of you wasting this money on here is that you are going to be broke later on, and that is
Mhm.
the real truth. If you don't take care of your credit, if you don't take care of certain things right now, you are not going to have this. And so you're going to think, oh, I have time. But time is something that is not as friendly as we think it is. It
Yes,
creeps up on you.
yes.
Now, as a lawyer, I'm very, very careful because every minute of my time is important to me.
Hmm.
Time is our currency.
Hmm.
Okay. And so when you've wasted so much time, especially in our community, a lot of people think, oh, I'm just gonna splurge in my 20s and 30s, and I'll catch up in my 40s. Well, it's in your 40s that you now realize that you've wasted all these years that you could have really worked and invest and have
Yeah.
something. Now you're a 40-year-old person still sleeping in your mother's house, still haven't done anything, right?
Yeah.
Haven't bought a proper bed, because you've wasted and splurged all this time going to clubs and parties and not doing anything. I always say, if you take 3 to 5 years and invest that in yourself, you would be surprised that that short-term sacrifice can turn out into a long-term gain for you. Just that 3 years of investment in your life could change your life so much that you don't even recognize yourself in a matter of a couple of years.
Hmm.
And that's very important.
You,
Yes.
you touched on something there that I think a lot of people in, I guess, current generations don't like to hear, which is the word sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
everything in today's generation, I think we feel it more post-COVID,
Mm-hmm.
where everything must have an immediate satisfaction.
Oh,
So
yes.
I'm bored, I want Netflix. We don't even bother going to the movie theater. We just click a
No?
button, watch a movie. Now
Yeah.
it's at the point where you watch a movie on Netflix, you get popcorn on Uber Eats from the theater. So within
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes, my kids could be watching the latest movie with popcorn,
Mm-hmm.
and they haven't sacrificed anything, right?
Anything.
They've just
Mm-hmm.
made a small plan. One of the
Yeah.
things that also came to mind when you were speaking there is the difference, and I think we've fallen into a trap of glorifying the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
Rich versus wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So rich is like this current moment, right? We drive the nice Mercedes, we have the handbag. Wealthy is having the ability to do that comfortably and then
Mm-hmm.
being able to make a social choice.
Mm-hmm.
Today I'll wear track pants and I'll carry a paper bag
Exactly.
versus, be fully decked out in, $3,000 of gear and the best shoes and go out
Mm-hmm.
and be seen. And I think we have to teach, and I think that's the premise of what we're doing here, is try and teach that next generation that it's okay, like you were saying about your sons, it's okay to not be, you know, all
Yeah.
shiny and glitzy, but be the leader
Yeah.
and also lead with intelligence. Look at the future, not just today. Today is going to be done in, for us, it's, another 12 hours and the day's over. Tomorrow's going
Absolutely.
to come again. But like at some point, you need to be ahead of today. So you got to
Yes.
think of tomorrow. You got to think of next week. You got to think of next quarter. So those are all good points.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
Another thing I wanted to ask you, obviously we Charlene and I, we are real estate professionals, so we're biased towards property and home ownership and things of that nature. What other sort of tools, resources, and things are out there for the average Canadian? So I think where this question is coming from is the difference, especially for you in the legal profession. You mentioned that people will call you obviously very late in the game, come to the hospital, mom's, something
Mm-hmm.
happened to mom. We need to figure this out. And I
Mm-hmm.
think part of the issue is they look at you as a legal professional
Mm-hmm.
as a vitamin versus a painkiller initially. Right? So the vitamin is something that is a nice to have. It's like a future plan. It's like something way off in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get around to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I have free capital, when I have money, when I'm going to the gym,
Mm-hmm.
I'll take vitamins. But a painkiller is something we need right now. And if we treated some of these smaller elements like painkillers and dealt with them immediately for
Yeah.
savings, powers of attorney, dealing with estates, even taxes. It shocks me when I hear people say, "Oh, got to get caught up on my taxes." What do you mean caught up? And they're years behind in paying
Mm-hmm.
tax, so they don't even know what they owe or
Yeah.
what is owed to them.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. You know what? Those are some good questions, and what I think of, there's a saying, in the health context that if you didn't come from a healthy family comes from you. Now, I will say if you didn't come from a wealthy family should come from you,
Mm,
right? That's the mindset that we should be adopting. That's the mindset that we should have. And to have that mindset, you need to be proactive rather than prescriptive, right?
right.
Or reactive. So being proactive mean that you are going to seek out professionals and get proper advice. Walk into a bank, speak to a financial planner or a financial advisor.
Mhm.
And I like you guys, real estate, I'm biased towards real estate as well. So I always feel like in our community, we need to be making those steps towards home ownership. We should also be taking that step, not just for ourselves, for the home ownership, but our children. Think about the children that you have and how you can get them early in home ownership. And to do that, it's very simple. See what financial plans that the bank or the government have. You can start with something like basic RRSPs, right? The ones that I have used at least or know of, right? Basic things like there's one called the first home savings account. Those are some of the basic ones that you start out, right? Simple little investment strategies, right? If you have a child, let's say a baby, you can start out with a basic things like educational saving plans that will help that child. You're taking those early steps in your life or in your child's life to get you somewhere, right? To get you to a particular point. So that's the first thing is when you think about how do I start planning, right? Or is it too late? First, start talking to people who understands the financial industry, right? And a lot of people think I don't have a lot of money. It makes no sense because it's not like I'm going to put a lot of money. It's always in my culture, we said every mickle make a muckle. It means that everything that you put in a little basket, it will, and you keep adding to it. Every little mickle makes a muckle, means that it becomes big. Right? So you don't have to make $100,000 a year to start putting away something. Right? Maybe you cut back on the coffees that you're having, right? And the Timmy's, right? Get a little cup and maybe bring your tea. It's healthier anyways than the coffee, right? People are going to disagree with me on that, right? Sorry. Invest in a lot of wealth building programs, right? There's there's stock exchange, right? There's cryptos, little bit at a time. I was really scared when crypto came out to go full on in it, but I said, I'm not going to let it miss me. So I did a little bit. And the more I understand it, I put a little bit more and a little bit more in it, right? But you don't have to put your eggs in one basket. You want to diversify and you want to start building somewhere. And you must have a goal. Okay, everything that you do, you must have a goal. Why are you doing this? Or am I just putting away money? Okay, well, part of it is maybe I want to own one home. Maybe I'm looking to own 5 homes, right? But how do I get there? Let's start with the first one.
Yeah.
And maybe you can't afford to buy in Toronto. Okay, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be looking maybe in Durham, in Bowmanville, in Peterborough, in all the other communities, Dundalk. Those are communities that are much more affordable, and you may be able to buy a property for 300,000-400,000 there as opposed to 1.2 million in Toronto, right? You can't get there. But what you want to do is to be saving towards those deposits and those down payments so you have a goal in mind. I always say to people, if you have a goal and it's clearly written down on paper or somewhere that you can see it and visualize it, it certainly will come to pass. I myself have done that and practiced that for many years. Almost 20 years ago, I made a plan. I wrote down all my goals, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan, and everything that I've written on that paper, I've achieved today.
Good for you.
Excellent.
Right?
Yeah.
And many years ago, in fact, it was that piece of paper, I found it many, many years later. It was in a storage. And someone said, hey, Mackeda, here's your plans that you had, a family member. And I said, oh my God, when I saw it, I cried. Because at the time, when I made all those plans, I didn't know where the money was coming from to go to law school. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was just me having an idea. Right? And then writing those things, the things that I visualize for myself. So I will say having that goal or that goal-oriented mindset is the first step to get you where you need to get to. Now, being proactive is you saying, before you invest, let me go talk to a lawyer, or before I sign that condo agreement, or let me find a lawyer to review my agreements, let me find a lawyer to look at what it is that I am going into, right? So that's you being proactive. Let me start drafting a will in time so that if something happened to me, my children are protected, right? Or my family members won't have all this headache. They know where things are. If you're a lot of, women, if you're a single mom and you have children, write out your will or get somebody to write your will and tell your children where things are to prepare them. We need to start having open conversations and open dialogue with our family members, our closest family members. Because oftentimes when something happened and they come to me, they're like, so your mom didn't tell you anything? No, everything is a secret. Right? It's good to have open dialogues. Point people. You don't have to tell them exactly that they have to touch it, but you said, hey, this is, if something happens to me, this is where you can. The other thing is, in other communities, most persons have a lawyer that they go to that they trust. It's important for us in our community to have a lawyer that is your lawyer, that you can come and talk to, and somebody who is knowledgeable. Back in the olden days, everybody go and they give their lawyer their will, and if any decision they're making, they talk to their lawyer. Our community don't do that. They avoid lawyers because they think that it's going to be legal fees. And yes, you may pay $200-300 to get some advice, but it's going to save you thousands of dollars in the long run, in the end. So we are being, counterproductive by, refusing to get professional help, but put ourselves in certain situations that could have been easily prevented down the road. So just to answer your question, being proactive, it is very important that you seek out the professionals early and the people who have knowledge and have sense. Because we have a lot of people walking around that don't have enough common sense, because common sense is not so common after all. Right?
That is
So
very
that's
true.
true.
Yeah.
Some people will go to a real estate lawyer who only have real estate knowledge, but don't have knowledge of, okay, perhaps I can guide you, because you're gonna get yourself into some situation, maybe a common law relationship, that person's gonna claim your house. Talk to a lawyer about what your rights are if you're going to move in with somebody.
Yeah.
Right? If you're planning on getting married, talk to a lawyer. How do I protect myself? How do I protect my children before I go into this situation? Right? If you talk to somebody who have knowledge of more than one areas of law, say, okay, I want to make my will, or I want to do some estate planning. How can I do that? Our community, I've had so much consultation sometimes with persons talking about protecting their wealth and building generational wealth. And I've shown them, you can set up a family trust, and they shy away from doing that oftentimes because, maybe they don't want to spend that initial money to set it up. But then again, they leave the estate, and in a matter of a year, the children are broke again. I met a young lady who was on drugs some years ago, and she was living really good life, even though both herself and her partner were drug addicts. And the reason they were able to live that good life, and they're not from our community or outside of our community, but it's because the parents put a trust in place that they couldn't have access to all the money. They had an executor or a trustee who provided a certain amount of money that she's able to live on, which is minimal until she cleans up her habits. And that wealth remains for so long when it is managed and guided. And then I have someone from our community that I met just last year, and his father died, leaving a lot of money and houses for him. And in a matter of 2 years, he was broke. And he's homeless. And he's not even able to find his birth certificate because he's moved so many times, and he's lost all the wealth that both his mom and his dad died leaving for him. Those are things that happen daily in our community. We have to ask ourselves am I doing the right thing, and how do I protect my children? How do I protect my family? And if it means that you have to rule from the grave, then so be it. Because sometimes our children, especially if they've had an easy life, they don't understand the sacrifices that you've made to get this far. And so when they get all this wealth in their hand, they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
We've heard about people winning the lottery and they were broke, and in a matter of 5 years or less, they're broke again. And it's because they don't understand what to do with all the money and all that thing that they have access to. And so when you don't have that knowledge, Greg, what do?
Yeah. You default, you go right back to what you know, right?
That's exactly so.
So, I mean, I would tell people at this sort of junction that we should look at you in the legal profession more as a partner, almost like
Mm-hmm.
a business partner on the front end versus
Yes,
that one to help get us out of a jam. One
that's
thing
right.
I want to ask you, you did mention that you practice as well in Jamaica.
I do.
So, I think something that's common amongst our community is having family that's spread between Canada, maybe even the US and the Caribbean, and
Mm-hmm.
having bits and pieces or assets strewn all through that are not tied together, legal issues in terms of, parents or grandparents pass away. There is surplus property that obviously is worth something,
Mm-hmm.
getting documentation, like all those sorts of bits and pieces. Because one of the things I think people get caught up in is this idea that there's never enough money. And I think
Mm-hmm.
they have a poverty mindset. There is no shortage of money in the world. It's just how it's
Absolutely not.
distributed
Yes.
and what you do with it. So, for instance, people win the lottery, as you mentioned, they win more money than probably any of our parents have made in their lifetime, and they blow
Mm-hmm.
it in 2 years. So that
Yeah.
there is a real issue.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about services and things that you can provide to the community that
Yeah.
can maybe help and alleviate or move money around or solve some of the problems that we have here?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you asked that questions because it's something that I'm so passionate about, especially in the Jamaican context. And, we are spreading our wings. The aim is to have our firm across the diaspora, across all the other Caribbean islands. And
Mhm.
so we're, in a few years, we're hoping that we'll have branches in St. Lucia and in St. Vincent and other places. For now, we have a branch in Jamaica. But it's interesting because I get excited talking about the fact that you can invest in Jamaica, and you can buy properties there. Okay. And in some cases, you can buy properties there with only 10% down or 5% down. And
Mm.
people don't know that. That's number one. Number two, if your family member has property or, dying, leaving property in Jamaica, you can sell those properties or you can leverage those properties to get money out of those properties to invest here in Canada or in other
Okay.
places. In fact, I have a client a couple of years ago who I actually told about this. And she had a property in Jamaica that she was able to take a line of credit off, a HELOC, and buy a property here in Canada.
Nice.
And people would think that, oh no, that's not even possible in Jamaica, right? But it is
Yeah.
that you have money sitting down there wasting away, and there's only so much land. So land
Mhm.
has become so valuable
Right.
in Jamaica. And if you have a property there, it's becoming so in fact, buying a property now in Jamaica is in USD. Okay.
Mm.
The simplest property you'd be looking at 400,000 US dollars, the simplest property in Jamaica. Okay.
Mm.
So it's even more expensive than here. And there are people from all over the world that's buying, not just Jamaicans.
Yeah.
So if you're not Jamaican, you can also buy property. I've had clients that were, different communities that come to me and say, hey, Mackeda, I want to invest in Jamaica. Let's go to Jamaica. And we're in Jamaica looking at hotels to buy and looking at different things to purchase. And they're not Jamaicans. In fact, some of them have just been going to Jamaica for the first time, but they
Mhm.
heard about it and they heard about the economy and they heard about things that are happening. And they also heard how good it is to invest in there, in Jamaica and all the benefits that's happening. So they now want to get, most investors, they want to look at what's out there. So they
Yeah.
want to become part of that. But but there's so many people in our community that have dad or granddad or grandma died leaving a piece of land. Okay, get the land survey. If you don't have title for the land, we'll help you get title for the land. That's what we do.
Nice.
Right? We'll help you transfer. We'll help you complete the probate if it's not completed and you get that property in your name, then you sell that property. You might be able to get a down payment for a property here. But
Wow.
it's such a great thing to know that you can be here, but still be doing things there. Or if you have things there that you're thinking in your mind, oh, it's in the country, it's useless. Maybe it's not so useless after all when you really find out the value of that property.
Mhm.
Wow,
Okay, but
that's
we don't know. A lot of people tend to say, "Oh, I'm here and it's there and it's forgotten." And then what a lot of people don't know is that when they literally neglect these properties in Jamaica, somebody else can go and live on that property, and then
waters,
they
right?
can apply their squatters' rights
Yeah.
or what we call adverse possession in law,
Yes.
that after a certain number of years, they can actually apply to the court and say, "Hey, I've lived here. I've been paying the property tax. Now it's my land."
Yeah. I believe it's 20 years here, but these are things that I had no idea. So I'm
Mhm.
learning something new today.
Yeah.
And I mean, wow, I'm just
Yeah.
blown away.
Yeah, there's so much things out there. And so oftentimes the mindset is, oh, we're here, let's just focus on what's here. You
Mhm.
don't have to focus on what's here. That if that's your route, go back and figure out, okay, if I had land or my grandparents died leaving land there or something's happening, let me find out or let me talk to somebody who have the knowledge so that I can help them get to, what they where they need to get to. But
Well,
but
now my
yeah.
afternoon is planned, Mackeda. I'm going to go looking into if my family has anything in Guyana that I can, get a
Oh,
hold of.
Guyana is the
What,
next place that you need to really
right?
be taking a look at because
Yes, absolutely.
Guyana is booming, and
Yes,
everybody and their grandparents and grandmother want to be in Guyana right now,
yes, yes.
and set up business in Guyana
Yeah,
because so many things are happening, and pretty soon people are not going to be able to afford
yeah,
the properties in Georgetown and especially those cities because it's
yes,
going to be we're going to be talking about hundreds of thousands of US dollars.
yes, absolutely. What about you, Greg? Anything in Trinidad?
Well, I do have my grandmother's house, which is it's been sitting there for what, 10 years or more,
Yeah,
which has
Yeah,
Trinidad
been
is another place.
yeah.
it's just been it's been a nightmare. So even finding a lawyer and part of the issue was my grandmother passed away and somewhere in the chain things had happened. So the
Mhm.
will was adjusted, people were taking off and so on. And my mother was dealing with it, and then my mother suddenly died of an aneurysm. Now I come along trying to pick up the pieces, and it's not so easy, right?
Yeah.
There's a real disconnect in terms of who owns the property.
Mhm.
And we just got to the point we just gave up. We just let the neighbors live there. They were paying rent. I don't know what
Well,
else to
here's
do.
what I would recommend, Greg. Keep collecting the rent because once you are collecting rent, then
Mm,
they can't say that they're squatting or they can't claim adverse possession because they have permission to live there. So that
mm,
distinguishes any right that they can claim under the squatters law. So that's number one. Number two, it's really not that difficult as you're thinking. We just need to chase the root of the title. Okay, so it's
mhm,
very easy. Once you can get a lawyer there, the first thing is to chase, was your grandmother on title? And if she wasn't, then survey the land and have them apply for title based on that. And it really is easier. Like the right lawyer can really get it untangled for you so quickly. So once you get it back in your grandmother's name, it now her estate, who is her children, who is her beneficiaries. Now your mother might say, okay, here is this, here's for your mom, if she has other siblings. If not, then it all goes to your mom. It's really not that difficult.
mm.
But again, getting the right lawyer who knows what they're doing and understand property rights is the first step.
Oh, that's great.
An estate. So it's somebody that understand both estate law and property rights.
That's great. Well, I mean, clearly, I mean, I don't feel like my story is unique, and that's the
Mhm.
that's
It
the sad
happens.
thing. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's
It's
more,
everybody's story in the Caribbean.
yeah,
Right.
like everyone was so eager to come to Canada or the US, and they left everything
They
behind.
did.
Yes.
And again, the paper trails and all the
Yeah.
legals and
Yeah. Yeah.
the foresight wasn't in place at the time.
Right.
Thank you very much, Makeda, for all this information. We're gonna leave your contact information as well in the description. But where else can people go to get more information, resources, and connect with you?
Well, certainly you can start with my website or my Instagram page at kedalaw.com or Kedalaw PC on Instagram. I think that's the best way. Or you just call my office. I'm right here in North York on 951 Wilson Avenue. Even if you just type in Keda Law, it's very easy. It's four letters, Keda. very easy to remember. If you type that in, it will pop right up on Google because we're so much on the internet and we're so much out there that you'll be able to find us very easily. Call my office. I'm happy to provide the first 15 minutes consultation for free. So persons can actually within that, you'd be surprised how much things I get done in 15 minutes.
Well, look what we've accomplished, and it's only been like half an hour. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right?
you've given a lot of value, and I think
A
people,
lot of value. Thank you so much, Mackeda.
yeah,
Absolutely. It has been my absolute pleasure always, always to share with my community and to drop advice and to, steer into the right direction. That's always what we aim to do is to uplift our community and to empower community because knowledge is power.
Yes.
Knowledge is absolutely power. And if we're empowered with knowledge, we can make the right decisions for ourselves and our families.
perfect.
Excellent. Thank you for wrapping that up.
No
Yes.
problem.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And until we
All
meet
right.
again.